I attribute that to my parents. I attribute that to the teachers that I had that really pushed me.
And I would say that Dominicans are not only some of the most beautiful and smartest people in the world, but very kind as well in general as a community. When you're in Dominica, you may or may not feel that way, but I can tell you, visiting Dominica from time to time, it is home. But when I'm there, obviously that's not where I reside most of the time. That just the sheer kindness and helpfulness of people towards each other creates a sense of community, and that sense of community allows us to feel empowered and who we are. Dominicans have a very high sense of self-esteem, appropriately high, and the work ethic is second to none. So you put all of that together, whether you remain in Dominica or you travel abroad to the U.S. or Canada or England, where there is a super competitive environment, we always seem to understand that we have it within us to succeed. And that hard work ethic that you apply at home, doing whatever your responsibilities are the same work ethic principles you apply anywhere else. And we will compete and we will be amongst the best of them. So it's been really thrilling for me. And my roots are grounded. My father was kind of the work ethic North Star in our family. I've never met a man that worked so hard and tirelessly in all my life. My mother kept us spiritually grounded. And those two things amounted to really the foundation for our success.
Great. One more question, and that is the link. I mean, Erwin, you mentioned that Linton was an inspiration to you, and I know the admiration is shared because I can see the look on Linton's face when you talk. So I see a mutual level of admiration. But within the Dominican diaspora, I'm going to ask a specific question to that. Within the Dominican diaspora, what do you feel can be done, within the Dominican diaspora to build more success stories like you guys? So it's not a conflict with the first question. It's because, again, it's specific to the diaspora experience of going abroad and looking for role models who are going through the same thing. You come in, you go to university. Many Dominicans who go into the diaspora, whether it's in the UK or the US, don't end up going to university. They end up going straight into the grind of working to basically to pay the bills and to establish themselves in wherever they are. But what do you feel? What kind of steps can be taken to make successes of themselves?
So I'll go first this time, Linton. I think there's a misconception. First of all, most people don't go to universities, no matter where you are. Most people go into the grind. And not only is there nothing wrong with that, there is a beauty and strength and inspiration and creativity that comes out of that. Success comes from within and from what you do with what you have. University, which I am a huge supporter of advanced education, but I don't want it to come across as that is the only avenue or even the preferred avenue. That's the first thing. The second is Dominicans in general that I have come across in my life are, quite frankly, more successful as a percentage of the total than people I know from almost anywhere else. So I think the issue is not that we need to create more. I think what we need to do is have a forum where we can showcase more of the successful Dominicans abroad so that people in Dominica can see and be inspired by them, because we are many.
Great.
I want to ask a question. How did you guys decide on establishing yourselves in the US? Why stay in the US after, acquiring your degrees and why not come home?
So I will tell you, after I graduated from the University of Dayton in chemical engineering, I actually moved back to the Caribbean, so more to St. Croix, because in my field as an engineer, at that time working for large corporations, the opportunity presented itself for me to come back to St. Croix and work in the alumina industry. So Martin Marietta Aluminum was the company there. So I basically came back from that perspective. A lot of times it's the opportunities that that's afforded you, and so that was it for me. So if you ask, well, have I ever thought of coming back to Dominica to a certain extent and establishing there? So as a young person growing up, you 20, 21, 22, you're trying to establish yourself and learn as much as possible. So that's what I did. And then when I left St. Croix, I went back to the States, and then I worked in the automotive industry for a while, and then the chemical industry and what have you. So it was always from that perspective that I was looking at how do I get better in my craft per se, and give back at the same time. So we did some things like more the bringing engineering students from University of Dayton to Dominica, right, so that they can help with small businesses in programs like that. So I was engaged more from that perspective, and more so than deciding to leave the U.S. and relocate back to Dominica. At that time, growing up, that was not something I thought of as much, I would say.
And Mr. Raphael?
And for me, recall my story is a little different. When I left Dominica, I was a year and 3 months. So I grew up really in the Virgin Islands. When I graduated from university here, I did consider options in St. Croix and other parts of the Caribbean. I actually interviewed at Hess at the oil refinery where my dad worked. I considered opportunities here, and it appeared to be, and in fact was, that there were a lot more opportunities at the time for me to start and grow my career in America, and there was nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think had I not done that, given what I chose to do in life, I may not have ended up in the position I am now, where I am actively engaged with on web services on a fairly significant project with the government of the Virgin Islands that will end up helping all of the islands of the Caribbean. So I think that everything comes around, it comes full circle, and it's a matter of using what you have and making the most of it. And that's how I made my decision.
Can you share, Irvin, a little? You said there's a project connected to the Virgin Islands that will help the rest of the Caribbean, and a light bulb went off. I don't know the details. If it's not confidential, can you share some of that?
Well, what's not confidential about it is Amazon, the largest provider of cloud computing services in the world, that can provide a platform for e-commerce throughout the Caribbean and make it instant connections to the whole world. So long story short, anything that's available anywhere, any data that's available anywhere in the world can instantly be available to the islands of the Caribbean once this is done, and vice versa.
Okay. Well, guys, on that note, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Keep it locked to the other side.
Right here, right now, I put the offer out. I don't want to chase you down. I know you see it. You run with me, and I can cut you free out of the treachery of walls you keep in. So trade that typical for something colorful. And if it's crazy, live.
Can we talk during this time, or is
it sensible? A king of conventional, or you can risk it all and see.
You know?
Don't you wanna get away from the same? Oh, pot you gotta play, 'cause I got what you need to come.
So, Irvin, have you met Kat Linda?
It'll take you to the other side, 'cause you can do like you do, or you can do like me. Stay in the cage, or you finally take the key. Oh, damn, suddenly you're free to fly. It'll take you to the other side.
my friend. You wanna cut me in? Well, I hate to tell you, but it just won't happen. So thanks, but no, I think I'm good to go. Cause I quite enjoy the life you say I'm trapped in. Now I admire you, and that'll show you do. You're onto something, really it's something. I live among the swells, and we don't pick up peanut shells. I'll have to leave that up to you. Don't you know that I'm okay with this uptown part I get to play? Cause I've got what I need and I don't want to take the ride. And I need to see the other side. So go and do like you do. I'm good to do like me. Ain't in a cage, so I don't need to take the key. Oh.
Welcome back to the other side, guys. We're talking about building on Dominican roots. We have here with us, I wouldn't say in studio. We're still doing the type of social distancing. I think it's a thing we're accustomed to now. I think we're doing more of this. Joining us on live, we have Mr. Linton Scotland, VP of Supply Chain and Chief Procurement Officer at Consolidated Edison, and Mr. Erwin Raphael, Chief Director of Operations at Amazon. I think we're about to dive back into those questions. You want to go first? Because I have one, but I feel you should go first.
So I have a question for both of you, but it's specific to both of your backgrounds. The first to Erwin, and it delves into Amazon. So the Caribbean, as you know, is one of the most avid markets for online shopping. The fact that we're small islands doesn't change the fact that we consume heavily. Are there any plans in the future for the other side of things, which is from the production side, to have any fulfillment centers in the Caribbean, given the fact that there are more and more people who are looking to now have Amazon originators?
So I'll answer the question as well.
I think your mic went off. Can you turn
Amazon
off?
is
Okay.
quite secretive when we don't speak about our future plans. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly now.
We don't speak of our future plans, but I am not aware of any plans at the moment about fulfillment centers. The whole concept behind fulfillment is being able to aggregate large volumes of packages in one place and quickly and easily distribute it around the world. Amazon has made its name by making really anything available to anyone at any time, keeping it affordable and being able to deliver it very quickly. I cannot, in my mind, and I'm speaking as myself, not on behalf of Amazon, I can't see how that model would work right now for fulfillment in the Caribbean, but who knows what the future brings.
Thanks. And for Linton, your thoughts as someone in the energy business, your thoughts on the potential of geothermal to create a better standard for energy dependency and moving away from fossil fuels, and to be able to become some form of a revenue earner for Dominica?
Yeah, so this whole area of clean energy is front and center, right, around the world. Even as we look at what's happening in Ukraine, right, and the aspect of fossil fuel and oil and what have you. So the dependence on fossil fuel is something that the world is going to be shifted, right? And so the whole area of electrification is a huge part, right, of any company, any country's future. The other part of it is climate change and resiliency, right? So we in the Caribbean, we get those storms, right, that could knock out power and basically impact the whole grid. So that area, those things, clean energy, and then the aspect of climate change, those are the things that we're facing. So when you think of Dominica, we have fossil fuel, that's our main source, and then geothermal, and then hydro, right? Those are the three key areas. We do have limited use of solar, but when you think of the total capacity of Dominica and what it needs, right? And then you think of a generation. So I think maybe less than a third now is from hydro, geothermal is potential, and then still have diesel generation units. So I think there's a potential for diversification of your fuel source by utilizing hydro and geothermal. That's true. One of the challenges is in terms of how much you're going to produce, and if you produce more than you have the capacity to consume, then what do you do with that excess energy? So the thought process has been to, well, let's export that energy, right? And you think of the neighboring islands of Guadeloupe and Martinique to do that. So the challenge I see that we have is the economies of scale. So you think of geothermal plant, and if you put a 50 megawatt geothermal plant, that is still pretty small, right? Right now, I'll tell you the size of plants that people are putting up that makes it worthwhile from an economies of scale standpoint is 1,000 megawatts, right? And that's even just a one plant. So the challenge we have is really the transmission. So you think of huge transmission lines that would have to be put in place between Dominica, Guadeloupe, Martinique, and what have you, and the cost of that, and is the size of your generation that you will be putting enough to overcome these challenges, right? So that is one of the key things I see. How you solve for that, it's still, at the end of the day, it's still economics, it's still finance, that's what drives it. But I still see, from a domestic standpoint and utilization of what you naturally have. So you have the sun, you have hydro, you have geothermal, and so from a dependence on fossil fuel, you can wean yourself off from that, and then become more independent. And then from a climate change standpoint or clean energy, we can achieve that.
Great.
I have a question. I'm just wondering, what do you think, Mr. Linton, especially because you've spent time here in Dominica much longer than Mr. Raphael? What do you think are like the present day challenges for, young people, for anybody just trying to succeed? And how do you think those challenges can be addressed?
Yeah. So I think
in Dominica, sorry.
Yes. So I would say the challenge is it might be access, not so much access to information, because we all have that information now that we didn't have before, right? So that's not one of the challenges I'd note, but I think it's an advantage. So if you think about in the past, if you had to study, you'd have to have the information. Now the information is all available, right? Through the internet, through online learning, you have that. The access to markets through marketing. So we have a lot of those things that we didn't have before, right? And so it's helping, I always say, helping young people see their potential and help them to reach it, right? So I think entrepreneurial opportunities, and that they can produce something that can be utilized not only on the local level, but even regional and even internationally, right? Because you have to have the markets, right? So you can provide things for people to do, but if they don't have the market for them to actually sell whatever the ideas or their goods, it makes it very difficult, right? So you think of some of the Caribbean folks. So think of Barbados. Think of Rihanna, right? How huge she got. Here's somebody from the Caribbean, right? And became a megastar, right? Those types of things are there for us now, right? Whether it's through our music, whether it's through our marketing, whether it's of ideas and services. I think that market is available to us, but I think it's instilling those entrepreneurial thoughts into folks and helping them to see that vision and help accelerate that and provide the resources for them to get there.
Okay, I'll jump in here. Both of you gentlemen, I know, are strong on mentoring, especially of Black youth. The Executive Leadership Council is an organization of the top 100 Black people in business. And Irvin Ellington, you may just spew out some of the corporations and some of your colleagues. So, I mean, it's not to boast, but to show, how big this is. Irvin, on your side, you recently set up the Lantern Network. Speak to your background on that and about the issue of youth and inspiring youth. So I'll leave it to you. I know you're articulate, so speak to that.
Fantastic. One of the challenges in America is the reality that the opportunity, although it is present, is really not as accessible to all. Throughout my career, I realized that there were many situations where a little bit of mentorship, supporting the youth, helping open doors, helping direct, made such a huge difference that my wife and I decided to formalize that into an organization that we have mirrored after the Underground Railroad. Underground Railroad, as you well know, in America, was a network of people helping other people who were enslaved at the time escape slavery into freedom. But first, they had to inspire them by telling them the stories of what it meant to be free. If you've never been physically free, why would you want it? And then they had to guide them there because they didn't know the way, and trying to escape slavery, getting caught was punishable by death. And then once they got there, somebody had to set them up so they had a place to live and a place to work and a place that recognized their self-esteem. Today, there's not physical slavery anymore, thank God, but there's still this economic bondage that a lot of Americans feel, and unfortunately, a great deal of them are Black and brown people. And so we founded the Lantern Network to do three things. First, to inspire by showing stories of people like Sam, like Linton, like myself, and thousands of others who are Black who have had these challenges that they have and were able to overcome them. That's our first pillar, inspiration. The second pillar is guidance, where we pair them up with mentors. And the mentors can be anybody in the world who is willing and able and has the time and the commitment to help guide them to success. And the final pillar is propulsion, where we actually propel their careers by placing them with large corporations that we have formed strategic partnerships with. So we believe by realizing this vision, we can not only benefit those individuals, but benefit the whole country, the United States, that is, and the rest of the world by leveraging this concept. That's what my wife and I have been focused on. We started the 501c3 last year. We just completed our first year, and we're very proud of the young people ages 10 through 28 that we are mentoring and supporting and guiding as a nonprofit organization. This is one of our ways of giving back.
Do you see the Lantern Network spreading beyond the United States? Of course, we're in Dominica. Do you see the Lantern Network spreading beyond the United States to the Caribbean? And also, I know you guys, but I'll put you on the spot. We, Kenny and I, we've been working, and this is something Jungle Bay has done in terms of mentoring young entrepreneurs. We did a program last November, and we certainly intend to do something with the youth division to promote and to mentor young Dominican entrepreneurs. So I'll put you both on the spot and tell you that you have invitations and you are expected to be in Dominica sometime in November. When we set the date, we will certainly let you know, because I think you guys would be a great inspiration to young people. So Irvin, is it something that are we expanding the Lantern Network to the Caribbean and Dominica in specific?
Well, first I'd like to say when my older brother asked me to be somewhere, then that's just where I go. So
Amen.
Secondly, the Lantern Network, we were quite ambitious when we started it nationally here in the United States, as opposed to just one city or one state. And we do have ambitions of growing globally. We believe that these very principles will apply anywhere. And I, of course, partial towards my people in the Caribbean. And so I see this as a great opportunity, not only for people in the Caribbean who may migrate overseas, but also within the Caribbean itself. I remember Sam gave me the great pleasure of participating and speaking at a conference he held, Waitikubuli Leve, at Jungle Bay. Still one of the most memorable moments of my life. And those are the types of things that we're about. So I think the opportunity is there. I will have to go back and meet with our board and think about timing. But the answer to your question, Sam, is of course.
So I think one of the key things is, and it's a concept, to him much is given, much is required, right? And so when you think about it, we have been blessed beyond measure. We have been given quite a bit. And so it's really, what are we giving back to society? What are we giving back to our people? And so Sam referenced the ELC. And so again, for me, it's so great having Irvin as my brother, as a fellow ELC member, because when you think, and Sam, it's not 100, it's actually about 800 of us now. And when you think of the most powerful African Americans in corporate America, the ones that, so you think of any major company in the US, and the senior executive that might be Black in that organization, we know each other. And we collaborate, we support each other, right? And so you may recall the issues that happened in the US in the past couple of years, social unrest, right? And it started with way back even in Ferguson, right? The Ferguson riots. It had the Baltimore riots. You had the Flint, Michigan water crisis, and a lot of those things that happened in Black and brown communities. And I never forgot when we were and some ELC members were in Ferguson as we were having some discussions there. And one of the young ladies said to, at that time, our president, Ron Parker, says, "You guys have forgotten us. You have made your millions and you've gone to the suburbs to live, but you've left us behind," right? And that was really a touching moment. And that's one of the reasons we started the Community Impact Initiative within ELC, to give back to those who were economically disadvantaged, but academically, great students, to give back. And so we've given millions of dollars in that vein. I will tell you, some of my proudest moments is to see kids that you work with from the inner cities of Wilmington, Delaware, and others that are now working on Wall Street, right, and doing fantastic, right? And it's because of some mentoring, some helping in their development throughout the years that they go on to that. And I see the same thing in Dominica. We have some bright young people. So how are we mentoring them? How are we helping them to realize their potential? Because in every one of them is an Irvin Raphael, is a Linton Scotland, it's a Kenny, it's a Sam, right? That is just waiting to develop, but they need that inspiration, they need that guidance, they need that support, right? And so again, to the concept of, to him, much is given, much is required, right? So we can have all this, but if we're not giving back, then what is it worthwhile? And I think for me, that inspiration comes from my parents who are deceased, right? Because for me, my mom was one of the most giving persons I ever met. I said I grew up in St. Joseph, right? And we have a house in St. Joseph I've been repairing and renovating and so on. And at the back of that house, my mom used to have a Friday afternoon Bible class every Friday, right? And there were so many people I met over the years that said, "You don't remember me? I used to come to your mom's class every Friday." Well, that was my mom's way of giving back to her community. And so that's instilled in us. And I say the same thing with the Raphaels, because, their parents were the same, right? Giving back in so many ways. And so we cut from that same cloth, I said. So I say, as you ask about, mentoring and giving back, I think again, I go back to the statement, to him much is given, much is required.
So, Mr. Linton, what are you or collaboratively doing to give back to Dominica?
Yeah, so a couple of things we've been working on, right? So I mentioned the taking engineering students from the University of Dayton, bringing them to Dominica, working we did in the coconut oil projects. We worked in the Kalinaga territory. We did some things in there. So it's a 10-week program where students come. They might be juniors in studying engineering. It's called the Ethos program, and engineers in technical service. Humanitarian service. So they come into Dominica, and it's a cultural immersion because some of these kids have never been outside the United States, and we immerse them into the community, and they actually work on projects. I'll tell you, so one of the things that we did, even in the coconut oil, and we worked with Barney's Farms at that time, Barney's products in Cassie Bruce area and Woodford Hill. And through the experimentations that we did, we were able to increase the coconut oil production by about 35%. And these are engineering students utilizing that. The other areas, it's really, as I mentioned, right? So because of the network we have, being able to call on people when the need arises to provide services to Dominica. So, the generation unit that we gave to Dominica, that's a 1 megawatt. That's a huge, that can power thousands and thousands of homes and provide electricity for the financial center, the police, the fire ambulance, all of that area, right? And how did that come about? It was a call to the CEO of Dynergy when the hurricane hit and say, hey, we need generation, right? And so what can you do? And what can you give us? And he said, hey, we have a 15 megawatt unit, but I can give you. That was way too big because that's basically all of Dominica's needs, and it operates on the gas, and we don't have gas in Dominica, so it's like, no, we can't use that. We have a 1 megawatt in California. I said, we'll take that. And again, it's that utilizing your relationship network to provide that, and free of charge, right? They did. Dynergy did a huge in terms of sending that unit from California to St. Louis, reconfiguring it for frequency for Dominica standards, shipping it down to Miami. And again, through that process, all of us as Dominicans came together to do that. I will tell you, Gabriel Christian and Associates, they at law firm did all the work that was necessary, the legal work to get this thing done. Our folks at Tropical Shipping, Tamara Lowe, right, really did all of that work to help us get that unit down. And so those are the things for me in terms of giving back. It's one part. But I say one other thing I will reference, right? And, so it goes back to what Irvin said. It's not all education, right? It's not all about university. One of the most successful people for me was my older brother, Ashby, right? My older brother had his own business in Miami. And one of the things he did is giving back to our community of St. Joseph, right? So we organized a cleanup and employing the young people in St. Joseph, right? To just go around and making sure we're cleaning up the village and those kind of things. So it's those kind of things that we, in terms of giving back to Dominica, that for me, it's at the heart of it all. Because at the end of the day, I am Dominican, right? And I am engaged. I will be engaged in anything that is involved in improving the lives and the opportunities for our people. And so that's what I would say to that.
And I just want to add to that. First of all, +1 to everything you just said, especially development like energy, electricity, and that type of thing. But I think we have to be careful here, because when it comes to the environment and nature and what we have, I would say Dominica is a bit of an environmental virgin, and we can't give that away. If in our haste to be like the rest of the world, the reality is we're giving away the thing that the rest of the world is craving. You may not appreciate the clean air and the clean water and being able to eat fresh fruits and fresh vegetables and pineapples and smell bay leaves and all of those types of things, that's mythical to most people in the world. They only know these things coming from a concrete jungle and from a store. And so to the extent that we can expose the world to that and share Dominicans' nature and the birds and what we have to share with the world, but maintain our environment in a pristine environment, I think is the way for the future.
Do you think we're doing that now?
I think we're doing some of that. For example, I have to give Sam a plug. I think at Jungle Bay, that's the whole idea. At Jungle Bay, I think we're doing some of that, maybe in some other areas as well. I think there's more. I think there's more to do. I think the world is craving Dominica, and sometimes when you're actually in the environment, it's difficult to appreciate. But what we have in Dominica today is truly almost unobtainium to the rest of the world, and we need to appreciate that, and we need to market that.
So one last thing I would say to that, and I totally agree with Irvin, because I like Irvin. I think we spend a lot of our time overseas, right? Traveling the world, right? And all around the world, right? And I'll tell you, there's in all my travels around the world, there's still nothing that compared to the island oasis that is Dominica. The aspect of being able to go to the waterfall and just be there, and the crystal clear water, the fruits, the vegetables, all of those things. And I'll tell you, even right now, what we have, the rest of the world will be craving.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, yeah, let me
Yeah, go ahead.
Irvin, if I may, I mean, Irvin, you spent a better part of your life, 30 years plus, in the auto industry at the highest level, general manager of auto plants, and actually general manager of Genesis Auto, which is the luxury line of Hyundai. But you're now in logistics, which is interesting. And we have farmers in this country and people that produce things, whether it's oils and different specialty items. And there is a challenge with the logistics of distribution. And this, I think, when you speak of an economy, if we found ways, Dominica is a small economy, so we're challenged with that in so many ways. I'm sure you're aware of that. How is there a model that we can use? Could you advise anything generally? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there anything that you can suggest that would be practical in the case of Dominica to make a difference for the economic development of the island?
That's a brilliant question, and you are putting me on the spot, but that's okay. I'm going to think a little bit here. I think we have to separate the product. First of all, let's look at goods separate from services. So I'm speaking of the goods here that we can produce. Some are more durable than others. If you have fresh fruits, papayas and whatnot, you have just a limited amount of time to get it to more of a global market. When you talk about things like bay oil and different things like that we can produce, I think there's a brilliant markets. As you well know, I'm partial to Dominican coffee, and I think the rest of the world is. I think there are a lot of things like that can, in fact, be marketed. And companies like Amazon that doesn't actually produce anything, and this is not a plug for Amazon per se, but it is the largest in its space. We don't really produce anything. We simply connect suppliers and consumers. I think finding third parties that we can ship through and support with the logistics, because the logistics network, it appears to be simple on the outside. It's actually unbelievably challenging from the inside. So rather than reinvent the wheel, I think partnering with others out there, and that's really a great project. You just gave me a great idea, Sam, to be able to get Dominican material and goods to the rest of the world, but also bring the goods from the rest of the world to Dominica.
So you're going to work on that and find a solution for us?
I don't know that I'm going to work and find a solution. I would love to study it, and maybe you and a team in Dominica can help. We can work together and maybe find a solution.
Okay.
It's now 7 o'clock, guys. You have a question?
It was going in the direction of that Sam went. So I would encourage Irwin to come up with the plan, so to speak, because there is promise not just for Dominica store, quote unquote, but for Caribbean products. Because one of the things that we have an issue with is building critical mass of any product. But there is also, Linton, a lot of intellectual property that is inherent in a lot of stuff that exists in Dominica, not just in
Exactly.
the fancy technology stuff, but also in the natural herbs, and also the effectively the natural environment in Dominica. The last comment I'd like to make is putting yourselves in the eyes of a tourist. In a week or so's time, we're going to have 7 days of 7 flights a week, 7 every day, daily flights from Miami to Dominica. That's a first. That's potentially close to 500 people a week coming into Dominica. What do you think we need to improve on? What are the kind of things we can do to make this a success?
Yeah. So I will mention a couple of things, but I'll just go back briefly to this whole logistics and supply before I answer your question, Kane. So if you think about what is happening around the world, the word supply chain is now more in the lexicon of whether it's the US or globally, than global countries, than any time. Before, nobody knew when you said supply chain what that meant, right? But that is something that is more and more, because you think of supply, you think of getting supplies and a demand, and interfacing between the supply, getting it to where the demand is. To think of shipping, logistics, and all the stuff that goes into that, right? So that becomes more and more critical. And I think how we utilize that in the herbs and this types of thing is really understanding the supply chain and being able to optimize that. In terms of your question relative to a tourist visiting Dominica, what are the things that we need to do, right? We got to realize that when Dominica is open to the world, that means the experience is really critical, right? So I will tell you, I was in Dominica a couple of weeks ago, right? And I had some guests that were coming in for the whole, the generator and stuff like that. But they were also coming to dive, right? That was also what they wanted to experience. And I will tell you, they went back with a feeling really great about Dominica. They said, hey, we're coming back. Right? Now, what made the experience so great? I will tell you, customer service was a key part. That feeling of, that we get when it says, man, people understand your needs and really there to meet your needs. So that A1 customer service, I cannot emphasize enough the aspect of customer service, right? The other one is cleanliness, right? So when one comes into a place, if you see garbage all over the place, it gives a certain impression of your country, right? So coming into the airport, I tell you, the place looked great, right? The flowers and everything, the area was beautiful, right? And as you drive through the countryside, that same experience you want to get through as you get to Roseau or anywhere else. So that's another thing. Accommodations, right? So now, because we're so connected in the world, when you in Dominica, you got to feel like I am still connected, right? So with the internet services, the all the things. So they and again, I'll put in a plug for Jungle Bay from that perspective. They stayed at Jungle Bay and they had a great experience. The food, the aspect of being able to walk through the property and feeling like you're in the Garden of Eden, right? Aspect of it, the fruits and what have you. That all that added to the experience that they had. So I would say customer service is one, cleanliness is another one, accommodations and then the things that we have that is just natural beauty, right? The being able to go to the waterfalls, the spas, and those kind of things. So I think we have the makings for that, but let's not take customer service for granted. And not, and we can't just say, oh, well, they can do with that. No, no, no. You have to understand the experience that the people are coming in with. And then the other one is cleanliness. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Okay, the line is blowing up. I want to take that call. Let's take that call now. You're live on the other side.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
What's your name, Miss Tanya?
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And good evening to Mr. Sam.
Yes.
And good evening to the two brilliant Dominicans we have with us tonight. I basically call to do three things. One is to commend these Dominicans living overseas, and also tell them of my disappointment a little bit. You hear me?
Yes, we're listening.
And to ask them a question. But Ms. Tanya, if I commend our Dominicans before telling you how much I commend you for asking relevant questions and asking questions that are legitimate, it will be unethical on my part. You are doing well. I hope you continue.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Number one, I want to commend highly, vehemently, these guys. They're from Dominica. I forget the names. I'm listening to them, and I'm grateful to God that we can have so many brilliant guys, people from Dominica that are serving overseas. That makes me remember people like Dr. Dale Dangeben, people like Dr. Sam Christian, people like, he called his name a while ago, the lawyer in America, Brother Gabriel, and many others. You know, but what I want to say about my disappointment is when you ask them a question why they did not stay in Dominica, come back to Dominica after they obtained their education, everything like that. I was hoping that they would just say, well, we had better opportunities, we see better opportunities, so we stay there. Because one of the guys said they had to go back to the Caribbean, to St. Croix, and I said, St. Croix is America as well. But that was just a little disappointment I had. I was expecting them to say, well, we saw better opportunities, so we stayed until, you know. So that's my disappointment. Now, the question I have to ask these two guys, right, these two brilliant men, is how would you all guys feel after, let's say you decide, no, you live in America and you're coming back to serve the rest of your life in Dominica. And when you reach in Dominica, you are rejected. Whatever government, whatever administration that is in office, they would reject you. How would you guys feel?
What do you mean rejected, caller? I think you should explain what you mean rejected.
Well, what I mean, when if they would decide, you know what, we had enough of America, we're gonna give the rest of our lives to Dominica, to serve Dominica. Mm-hmm. And when they reach in Dominica, best it could be whatever government in office, they just cannot function because they have been blocked. How would they feel?
Oh, maybe they try to set up a business or something like that, and they're being rejected. That's what you mean.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Thank you. I love you, Tanya. You're doing well.
Thank you. Okay, caller. Thanks. We'll see what the guys have to say.
Okay.
Well, I'll go first, Lyndon. I don't think anybody would appreciate feeling rejected, but I don't know that I would have put myself in a position where I would feel rejected. I think it's important to understand what the issues are, and there's always a solution. I don't believe that anybody can close all doors on me. When one door is closed, another is open. And so I think being open-minded and finding ways to work through whatever the issue is. You're asking a question in the hypothetical, although I think it might be based on some practical example that you have. But I think you just have to be tenacious and continue with being creative and find solutions, because if you're here to do good and do the right thing, then a door will open.
Mm-hmm. So I think to your point, it's the hypothetical, right? Question. Certainly, nobody wants to feel rejected, and anybody, if you feel rejected, that's not a good feeling. I cannot answer to hypothetical because but you asked the question of how would you feel. So I would say, in general, one would never feel good they've been rejected. I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. So people, the lines are open. You can call 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097. And those overseas, give us a call at 305-432-9624. Let's take this one. You're live on the other side.
Yes, good evening, Tanya, good evening, Sam, Kenny, and the two brilliant gentlemen from overseas.
Good evening.
I think very, very informative, very, very well done. I believe, we have scope for development in every sphere. I mean, we is our niche island, and we need to really use our human resource capacities to see how we can enhance our country with respect to development. We've often heard of, let's say, resource, you hear about capital resource and all sorts. What about a resource bank with respect to human resource bank, where these gentlemen can work in listing persons who have expertise in different fields, and so that you can advertise that. So when the country is in need of assistance and to draw positive developmental plans for the country, irrespective to the sector, that they can identify persons who have the experience, not just about their education, but the practical experience, so that they can contribute. We can rely on them heavily to contribute, to make it happen. Because oftentimes we hear about a talk shop. We can talk well, but can we put all our plans into actions? And not just action, we have to be results-oriented. That is very important. Not just about talk and implementation, but results-oriented. So I'd like to hear if at all they can actually put a pool of persons together, certain expertise, that we can call on to can list them and provide that to the powers that be, so that whenever we are developing our local plan, that they can help in some way, because the environment has to be taken into consideration in your planning. But at the end of the day, they would have felt satisfied that they have contributed in terms of what happened in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you.
So I would say, that's a brilliant idea, and it's not an old idea. And I'll tell you, that idea has been, we actually had one of those over maybe even 10, 15 years ago, starting up a list of prominent Dominicans. And I tell you, I have met some of the most amazing Dominicans in the diaspora. So I had the pleasure of introducing Irvin when he got the Caribbean Award in Washington, D.C., I think it was 2 years ago, right? And then also I had the pleasure of introducing two other Dominicans who got this award. One is at IBM, and the other one is in the I don't know if it's the EPA, but in the health area, right? And so along with that, I work at Con Edison, New York. And one of the amazing things I've been at Con Edison now for 6 months, right? One of the things that blew me away was the number of Dominicans that I met who were brilliant. I tell you, and I was blown away, and they sent me the whole list of the Dominicans that are at Con Edison who are directors or section managers or what have you. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know there were so many people. But that's just a small segment of the folks that we have out in the diaspora that can be of service, right?
Mr. Scotland, what happened to that list? Because you said 15 years. I think you said the idea is not old, but I think you meant to say it's not new. So what happened to that? What happened to that list?
Well, I will tell you that was started by actually, when I think about it. So I'll give a little bit of history, right? There was the Rosie Douglas Foundation.
Mr. Scotland. I have the lines blowing up. The people want to reach you. They want to ask you questions.
Yep.
We have one coming in now. Let's take this one.
Okay.
Caller, you're live on the other side.
Yes, good evening to you and to members of your panel. I want to commend the two gentlemen for their contribution to this program tonight. And you don't always have to be fighting and shouting and struggling, but we have to be as balanced, open and honest as possible as a people. And so I want to commend them. I think the first call of the question he asked is a legitimate question, and I want to probably rephrase it. In terms of business, the jurisdiction must have ease in doing business. The level of bureaucracy may discourage, frustrate, and prevent the proper or the speedy flow of implementation of business. Secondly, in terms of the jurisdiction, and not say in Dominica, the jurisdiction, you have to have an ease of involvement, irrespective of your independence or your affiliation wherever. You have to have an ease and feel that you are, if you like, business development orientated and not merely attached to a movement, to an organization, to get things done, to be involved, to contribute to the development of the society and people. Because what I think we must move from just a matter of talk into people's development and so forth. And I think you are doing a fantastic job in that area. But in terms of the ease of doing business and the liberty of your freedom to do this business.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. I should probably add to that, Mrs. Scotland, because I'm sure you guys do stuff in Dominica, even though you live outside. Do you find ease in business, flow?
So I will say it's challenging in some cases, right? And it's some of the old adage, right, that a prophet has no honor in his own country, right? I mean, you hear that, and there's sometimes you experience that. So in some cases, it is challenging, right? I think sometimes then you have to try to pierce through that, but it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of determination to pierce through some of those things. It is sometimes, and I'll tell you, it's not something that's unique to us. It's sometimes to us as Dominicans, but sometimes I say it's something that we as African American people or Black people sometimes face more. So I don't know. So I think it's always challenging, and I could empathize with the challenge, right? That it and the difficulty sometimes in case. I think we haven't found how to best utilize our resources, and those resources are not our water, our food, our what have you, but our intellectual resources, right? We haven't been able to harness this successfully compared to other countries, right? I will tell you, in India, they do a much better job of that. In Singapore, they do a much better job of that. And some of the other countries, they cater to that because they recognize how valuable that is.
Is that why our list no longer exists?
I think that's a challenge.
Is that why the list no longer exists? Is that why we have so many Dominicans abroad doing so well, like you just mentioned, that don't come home?
Tanya,
So I think there are many reasons why, but I think the key thing is how do we harness that for the development and put, I would say in some cases differences aside and focus on the greater good, right? Mm-hmm. What is it that we have in common more so than what separates us? I think in a lot of cases we still have that divide, right? And not always pulling together. So I'll give the example, right? When we were doing the generator, it was, hey, it didn't matter where you came from. The fact is our country was in need and we all came together and we did this, right? Mm-hmm. And so that same resolve and to think of it as mission critical, to be able to overcome those barriers, I think it's critical.
I have sorry, go ahead, Owen. Go ahead.
Please, if it's okay. I think to answer that first question, I wanted to get back on the resource bank. Brilliant idea. But I would say rather than looking externally, the people who have done well from Dominica, who live in America, the UK, Canada, they're really fun. The people who are in America, who are in Dominica right now, with the exception of there's someplace else with more opportunity. So the resource bank can be started right now in Dominica by local Dominicans because they're brilliant people there right now. Why aren't we utilizing those resources, collecting those people and starting there? It's a lot easier to pull people from the outside if you already have something ongoing on the inside. And the second point about business friendly, Linton, the places you talked about, India, Singapore, and I would throw the United States in there. There are plenty of people who say that, hey, the government isn't friendly to their business and they can't do this and they can't do that. The reality is there's opportunity there. I don't know the local nuances and what the particular issue of concern is here, but there's a way to do it. There's a way to work around it, or there's a way to work with somebody else. There always is.
I have a comment on this, and this from the UK perspective, because I used to be involved with an organization. I used to be secretary treasurer of DONA, which is the Dominica Overseas Nationals Association. There needs to be an understanding from top to bottom of the society in Dominica and throughout the Caribbean, because it's a problem. We all know, many of us here have heard about Windrush, right? Well, we don't speak about the other part to that, which is where many of those people from the Windrush generation came back to the Caribbean and were ill-treated by their own populations because of the lack of understanding of the amount of work that they had to do to get to where they were able to build a property or buy a property in the Caribbean. And this needs to be understood, that not everyone is kind of rolling in milk and honey. These are people who worked very hard. I mean, I can tell you lots of stories from the UK where a lot of Dominicans came back to Dominica. They trusted people on the ground. This is not about one government or one set of people. This transcends probably 30 to 40 years of people coming back to Dominica with all of their life savings, taking everything. By dint of time, many of the people in the UK sold their properties, which they bought in the 60s and the 50s for like 50 to 100 pounds, in some cases to £1,000. And they sold in the 80s for the equivalent of millions of EC dollars. But it was still money that was hard earned. They came back to the Caribbean, and people not just in Dominica, in Jamaica, it was very prominent. There are many stories from Jamaica and Barbados. So these three countries, people saw them as an easy mark. And it wasn't the government that was disappointing them. It was the entire population, top to bottom. And we have to do more about letting people understand what you guys go through to be where you're at. It's, you spend a lot of time in freezing cold, in adverse conditions, working around the clock, sometimes 2-3 jobs. And then you come down to the Caribbean, and people need to understand that you worked hard for everything that you've got.
I don't know. Is a question you asked?
No,
it's a comment. I think he said he was making.
And I'm trying to give them the opening to be able to say the same thing, because everyone talks about the top achievers and bringing them back. It's also letting people understand that when they come back here, when they come to Dominica, that you don't try to treat them as someone who's basically someone to make some money off.
Right. I wanna touch on something that Linton touched on, and maybe the both of you can jump in there. Most places there is a great divide. Most societies, it's the same way in the United States. It's bigger, but you've got the Republicans and the Trump people and the Democrats, and it seems like it's a never-ending, them and them, conflict. You've got just about everywhere on the planet. Certainly the other Caribbean islands are no different, and Dominica is the same. I know that you guys are not into the Dominican political divide, and I think that's good, because you come with that credibility. But how do you suggest, because that's where Dominica is, to be honest with you, we're locked, spending our energy instead of attacking problems like you suggested, Linton. You see that. Our energy is spent fighting each other. How do we break that cycle? Could you maybe, with your brilliance, help us solve this? Because this is you haven't solved it in the US. Maybe I don't know, but can you help us in Dominica?
So I have a certain perspective on that, right? And I say it is. There's a certain humility that we have to have on both sides. What I mean by that is, for I'll say diaspora versus it's a diaspora and local Dominicans per se. A lot of times, sometimes in the diaspora, we may come back and say, well, okay, I have the knowledge and I'm here to teach you. And I think that is far from the truth. And at the same time, on the local side, it might be, well, who this person think they are? I remember them as a little boy running around with that, what have you, right? So you have that. So I think there's a lot that we have to learn from each other with humility. So folks in the diaspora, we have the folks, we have been exposed to certain things that can be helpful to the development of a country. At the same time, we have to understand the environment and how to work in that, right? In that environment, and how to help teach people rather, and not teach, but I mean how to learn. So first of all, to be listening and learning, right? And then building relationships. So and then actually then being able to work, that helps us being able to work effectively together. I say that if we're not able to do that, then we will be in that constant. So I'll give you an example, right? So I'm working
Can I pause for a
on.
quick pause? I need to take this call.
Yes,
Just
go
one
ahead.
call that's coming in there for a long time.
Sure, go ahead, please. Sir.
Caller, you're live.
Hey, how you doing?
Okay,
Great show, great show.
Overseas.
Sam asked a question a few minutes ago, and Sam knows the answer. Sam knows the answer. Get rid of this government that promotes mendicancy, and we won't be spending time fighting against one another. Sam knows that. Sam knows the answer.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So I know why Sam is playing like he's innocent. He's part of it. He's part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Great
caller.
show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your contribution.
Okay, I want to. I would like them to finish. We have 4 more minutes. We have 4 more minutes, and I'm not going over time today.
So you see an example there. How do we get beyond that, gentlemen?
So, Sam, the reality is that, and we have the same thing here. The UK has the same thing. And you'll be amazed that people will fight and take positions based on the position that the opposition has or that the ruling party has, no matter what, right? One party says one thing, the other one's against it, no matter how logical it is. I think the leadership and whether it's leadership of government, leadership in business, has to demonstrate the ability to step across the aisle and to work with the others so people can see, hey, it's not necessarily a bad idea just because it came from them. And all too often, that's where we end up, where everything that comes from the other person is automatically a bad idea.
So do you think we're doing that here in Dominica? Do you think we're crossing the lines, working together, collaborating with each other despite being on different ends?
I would have to ask you that question. I think you would be much more aware.
Don't you follow what's going on in Dominica?
Maybe not as closely as you do. I think the reality is that there's clearly the issues there, so we're not doing it enough.
Okay. We have a call coming. Let's take that quickly, please. We lost it. Oh, yes, here it is again. Last call for the evening. Caller, you're live.
Yes.
Please make it
Yeah,
quick.
I want to call back, but I think Sam and Kenny almost mess up something good that is going on with the question, trying to see how they can go wrong. The question that was asked. The United States has always had orderly governance in the U.S., not perfect, but orderly governance, exchange, and transition. Trump is the one who made it what it is now. So that question doesn't apply. Now, the issue about bottom down to top, it is not widespread as Kenny just alluded to a while ago. It is not widespread. And one or two people, yes, in every society. I remember in Jamaica, in Trinidad, there was an issue with the police in terms of partisan politics. It was getting out of hand. The commissioner of police called the both leaders, the prime minister, and he called the opposition leader.
Caller, you have to keep it short. We're running out of time, huh?
Yes, quickly. And they sat in the same room, and they fashioned the issue. But here, it doesn't happen here. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think I have to thank you for the caller. I think I need to help you understand the context. It really is a problem because of the I feel passionately about this because I saw too many elderly people moved to Dominica from the UK, and many of them died here, and their properties were left basically, alone, or they returned to the UK. And they were the first set of people who tried to reinvest in Dominica. They were the biggest investors in Dominica. Everyone talks about the high rollers, but they were the people who showed faith. And it's not a simple case of it being a little blip. Statistically, there's never been a statistical study on it, but we need to do better at every level of society.
I agree with that, every level. Okay, guys, it has been really, really interesting tonight. I think very informative and inspiring. Thank you, Mr. Scotland and Mr. Raphael. He speaks just like you, Sam. You all speak the same way. It's just he's cuter.
Good.
So, anyways, it was a good
Who I
show.
am?
it was a very good show. Thank you for joining us here on the other side. See you guys next week, same time, same place.
Nice joke.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Tanya. You got him back.
Right here, right now, I put the offer out.
The Global View on Q, the big station. Insights into where the people of Dominica and the Caribbean came from. Understanding our past.
All right, Owen.
Our present. Charting the way forward into our future. Together, eliminating poverty. Embracing justice, peace, and togetherness. The Global View on Q. Networking